The neon lights of New Shanghai's underground district flickered against the rain-slicked streets. Commander Sarah Chen adjusted her expensive fake jewelry, playing the part of a wealthy black market buyer perfectly. Her heart beat steadily despite the danger. 6 months of undercover work had led to this moment. The auction house looked innocent from the outside, just another abandoned warehouse in the industrial sector. But Sarah knew better. Behind those worn metal doors, some of the galaxy's most terrible trades took place, the buying and selling of sentient beings. A burly guard scanned her credentials. The fake ID chip implanted in her wrist passed the test, as it had dozen times before. "Follow me," he grunted, leading her through a maze of corridors. The auction room stank of too many species crowded into too small a space. Wealthy buyers from across the galaxy sat in curved rows before a raised platform. Some were human, but many weren't. She spotted the crystalline forms of Rigelians, the massive shells of Tor traders, and even a few silicon-based life forms she couldn't identify. Sarah took her seat, careful to move with the arrogant swagger expected of someone in her fake identity as a private collector. Her augmented contact lenses recorded everything, transmitting encrypted data back to XPU headquarters. One wrong move and she'd end up as merchandise herself, or worse. The first few lots were standard black market fare, stolen artwork, illegal weapons, and restricted technology. Sarah forced herself to bid on a few minor items to maintain her cover. Then the auctioneer announced the next lot, and her breath caught. Lot 47, one female Lumini, age equivalent to human mid-20s, excellent condition. They'd brought her out in chains. The Lumini woman's skin, naturally a brilliant blue that should have glowed like starlight, was dull with fear and exhaustion. Her large, silver eyes darted around the room, and Sarah felt a faint brush against her mind. The desperate reach of Lumini empathic ability seeking help. The auctioneer grabbed the Lumini's chin. Note the undamaged facial features, the intact neural nodes. This one was a healer on her homeworld, very useful for those requiring discreet medical attention. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits. Sarah's hand rose along with several others. The price climbed rapidly. Lumini were rare on the black market, and healers even rarer. She kept her expression bored even as her stomach churned with disgust. 200,000, called a Rigelian trader. 250. Sarah countered, letting just the right amount of irritation color her voice. 300. The Rigelian shot back. Sarah pulled out her trump card. 500,000. In untraceable credits. The room fell silent. Even for this crowd, that was serious money. The auctioneer's eyes gleamed. 500,000 bid. Going once. Going twice. Sold. The Lumini was led away to be processed. As she passed Sarah's seat, their eyes met. Sarah kept her face cold and disinterested, but she tried to project a feeling of safety, hoping the Lumini's empathic abilities would pick it up. An hour later, Sarah led her purchased to her waiting ground car. The Lumini's hands were still bound, and a control collar circled her neck. Guards watched them leave, hands on weapons. Only when they were safely away from the district did Sarah speak. "You're safe now. I'm Commander Sarah Chen, Sinological Protection Unit. We're going to get that collar off you and bring down the people who did this." The Lumini stared at her, silver eyes wide with disbelief, and the first faint glimmer of hope. Her skin brightened slightly, casting a soft blue glow through the car's interior. Sarah smiled gently. "First things first, what's your name?" The Lumini's voice was barely a whisper. "Naira. I am called Naira." "Well, Naira," Sarah said, turning the car toward her safe house. "Welcome to the first day of your freedom." The safe house sat on the outskirts of New Shanghai, hidden behind thick walls and advanced security systems. Sarah guided Naira through the entrance, watching as the Lumini took in her surroundings with nervous glances. The apartment was simple but comfortable. A living area, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a medical bay disguised as a storage room. "Let's get that collar off first," Sarah said, reaching for her toolkit. Naira flinched at the movement, her blue skin dimming to an almost gray color. Sarah froze, then slowly raised her hands to show they were empty. "I won't hurt you. I promise." The universal translator embedded in the control collar sparked and fizzled, damaged during Naira's captivity. Without it, they couldn't communicate properly. Sarah would have to rely on gestures and Naira's empathic abilities until they could find a solution. Sarah pointed to herself, then mimicked cutting motions around her neck, then pointed to Naira. The Lumini's silver eyes watched carefully before she gave a small nod. Moving slowly, Sarah retrieved her tools and began working on the collar's lock. 10 minutes later, the collar fell away. Naira rubbed her neck, tears gathering in her eyes. Her skin brightened slightly, though it was still far from the brilliant glow Sarah had read about in XPU files. Sarah led Naira to the medical bay, gesturing for her to sit on the examination table. The Lumini had several cuts and bruises that needed attention. As Sarah reached for the medical scanner, Naira caught her wrist. The touch sent a strange tingling sensation up Sarah's arm. Naira placed her other hand over her own chest, then pointed to Sarah's medical supplies and shook her head. She repeated the gesture, and Sarah understood. Naira was a healer. She wanted to treat herself. "Of course," Sarah said, stepping back. "Show me what you need." Over the next hour, Sarah watched in amazement as Naira used the medical supplies with expert precision. The Lumini's hands moved with practiced grace, applying treatments to her injuries. Occasionally, a soft blue light would emanate from her palms as she used her species' natural healing abilities. When Naira finished, she turned to Sarah and pointed to the kitchen, then made eating motions. Sarah smiled. Their first successful communication. "Hungry. I can help with that." Sarah prepared a meal, careful to include only foods safe for Lumini consumption. As they ate, she noticed Naira watching her intently. The Lumini's empathic senses were probably reading her emotions, trying to determine if she could really be trusted. Making a decision, Sarah put down her fork and closed her eyes. She focused on projecting her honest intentions: safety, protection, friendship. She thought about her disgust for the traffickers, her desire to help, her promise to keep Naira safe. When she opened her eyes, Naira was glowing brighter than ever before. The Lumini reached across the table and placed her hand over Sarah's. The tingling sensation returned, stronger this time, accompanied by feelings that weren't her own: gratitude, relief, and the first tentative threads of trust. That night, as Sarah showed Naira to her bedroom, the Lumini stopped in the doorway. She turned to Sarah and pressed her palm to her chest, then extended it outward, a Lumini gesture of thanks. "You're welcome," Sarah replied softly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll work on finding you a new translator, and then we can really talk." As Sarah walked to her own room, she smiled. The mission wasn't just about bringing down traffickers anymore. She had found someone worth protecting, someone whose trust she would fight to keep. In her room, Naira's glow provided enough light to see by as she curled up in bed, the first real bed she'd had in months. Her skin pulsed gently with the rhythm of her breathing, a sign that for the first time since her capture, she felt safe enough to truly rest. 3 days passed peacefully in the safe house. Sarah had found a working translator, and she and Naira were finally able to have real conversations. But their peace was about to shatter. The first warning came during breakfast. Naira suddenly stopped eating, her skin pulsing with rapid flashes of dark blue, a sign of danger that Sarah had learned to recognize. "Someone's coming," Naira whispered through the translator. "Many someones. They feel angry. Hunting." Sarah was already moving. She grabbed her emergency bag and checked the security feeds. Her heart sank at what she saw: 3 black vehicles approaching and a surveillance drone circling overhead. "They found us," Sarah said, quickly gathering essential items. "The trafficking ring must have discovered I'm XPU." She tried to contact her handler, Agent Wilson, but got only static. Comms being jammed. Not good. A loud bang shook the front door. They were trying to break in. Sarah led Nira to the hidden panel in the kitchen wall. There's a tunnel here that leads to. The windows exploded inward. Smoke grenades rolled across the floor, filling the room with thick gray clouds. Sarah heard heavy boots entering from multiple directions. Stay behind me, Sarah ordered, drawing her weapon. Through the smoke, she could make out dark figures moving closer. She fired 2 warning shots, forcing them to take cover. But Nira wasn't behind her anymore. The Lumini had stepped to her side, her skin glowing bright enough to cut through the smoke. They're surrounding us, she said, her empathic abilities tracking their attackers. 3 to the left, 4 right, 2 coming through the bedroom. Sarah smiled grimly. Having a living motion detector at her side definitely improved their odds. The fight was brutal but quick. Sarah's military training combined with Nira's warnings made them a formidable team. When a shot grazed Sarah's arm, Nira pulled her behind cover and pressed a glowing hand to the wound. The pain vanished instantly. Save your strength, Sarah said, but felt grateful for the healing. They fought their way to the garage, where Sarah kept a backup vehicle. But as they reached it, Nira suddenly shouted, "Above!" Sarah looked up to see the surveillance drone had crashed through the skylight. It wasn't just watching anymore. Its weapons were armed and aimed directly at Sarah's head. Time seemed to slow down. Sarah knew she couldn't dodge fast enough. She closed her eyes, waiting for the impact. It never came. When she opened her eyes, she saw Nira standing in front of her, hands raised. A sphere of brilliant blue energy surrounded them both. The drone's shots bounced harmlessly off the shield. "I won't let them hurt you," Nira said, her voice strained but determined. "You saved me. Now it's my turn." Sarah stared in amazement. She'd never heard of Lumini having defensive abilities like this, but there was no time to ask questions. She pulled Nira into the vehicle, and they crashed through the garage door into the early morning light. As they sped away, Sarah glanced at her companion. Nira looked exhausted, her glow dimmer than usual from the energy she'd spent, but there was a new strength in her silver eyes. "That shield," Sarah said, steering them toward her backup safe house. "I didn't know your people could do that." Nira smiled weakly. "We're healers. Sometimes healing means protecting. I've never used it like that before. But when I saw you in danger," she trailed off, looking down at her hands. Sarah reached over and squeezed Nira's shoulder. "Thank you. You saved my life back there." "We saved each other," Nira replied softly. Her skin brightened slightly at the touch. As they drove into hiding, Sarah realized something had changed between them. They weren't just rescuer and rescued anymore. They were partners, and they would need that partnership for what was coming next. The backup safe house was smaller than the first, just a single room hidden above an old noodle shop. Sarah sat by the window, watching the street below while Nira rested on the narrow bed. The morning's fight had drained them both, but questions kept spinning in Sarah's mind. "Nira," she said softly, "how did the traffickers get you in the first place? You're too powerful to be taken easily." The Lumini's glow dimmed to almost nothing. She sat up slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "I wasn't taken by traffickers," she whispered. "I was sold to them, by my own government." Sarah turned from the window, shocked. "What?" "The Lumini hierarchy. Our leaders, they have a secret program." Nira's voice shook as she spoke. "They sell those of us they consider defective." "Defective?" Sarah moved to sit beside her. "But you're a healer. I've seen your abilities. You're amazing." A bitter smile crossed Nira's face. "I'm too emotional. On my world, healers must remain completely detached. We treat the body, nothing more. But I..." She touched her chest, where her glow pulsed faintly. "I couldn't stop myself from feeling my patients' pain, their fear, their joy when they recovered. I wanted to comfort them, not just heal them." Sarah felt anger building in her chest. "They sold you because you cared too much." Naira nodded. A hierarchy believes emotion makes us weak. They want us to be perfect, logical, controlled. Anyone who shows too much feeling is labeled defective. Some disappear into rehabilitation centers. Others, like me, are secretly sold off-world. How many? Sarah asked, her fists clenching. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Naira's skin rippled with dark colors. Many of my friends vanished over the years. I always thought they were sent for rehabilitation. Now I know better. Sarah stood up and began pacing. This was bigger than a simple trafficking ring. This was government-sponsored persecution. Why didn't anyone speak up? Fear, Naira said simply. And those who might have spoken up were the ones being sold. She reached out and caught Sarah's hand, stopping her pacing. There's more. The hierarchy, they're developing technology to suppress our empathic abilities completely, to make us pure logic beings. That explained the dampening technology the traffickers had used. Sarah felt sick. She'd seen a lot of horrible things in her work with XPU, but this was different. This was systematic destruction of everything that made the Lumini special. Naira's hand tightened around hers. When I first felt your emotions, I was confused. Humans feel so strongly, so freely. You don't try to hide it or control it. Your emotions make you stronger, not weaker. Sarah sat back down, not letting go of Naira's hand. On Earth, we learned long ago that suppressing emotions doesn't work. They come out anyway, usually in worse ways. Being able to feel, to care, to love, that's not a defect. It's what makes life worth living. As she spoke, she noticed Naira's glow getting brighter. The Lumini leaned closer, her silver eyes intense. I've never heard anyone say that before, she whispered. The translator couldn't quite capture the emotion in her voice. Their faces were very close now. Sarah could feel the warmth of Naira's glow on her skin. Something was growing between them. Something that went beyond rescuer and rescued, beyond econ friendship. Naira's free hand came up to touch Sarah's cheek. The familiar tingling sensation spread through Sarah's body, but this time it carried different emotions. Trust, affection, and something deeper. The moment was broken by a sudden beeping from Sarah's comm unit. She reluctantly pulled away to check it. Her eyes widened at the message. We have a new problem, she said. The Lumini hierarchy knows you're with me. They're sending agents to Earth to recover you. Naira's glow pulsed with determination. Then we'll face them together. Another day passed in hiding. Sarah and Naira sat at a small table, planning their next move. Maps and data tablets covered the surface as they worked on their biggest challenge yet, exposing both the trafficking ring and the Lumini hierarchy's corruption. The evidence has to be perfect, Sarah said, studying a holographic display of New Shanghai. We need to prove the connection between the traffickers and your government. Naira nodded, her glow steady and determined. I know where they keep their records. The auction house has a secure room in the basement. All sales are documented there, including payments from the hierarchy. Sarah frowned. Getting in won't be easy. They've doubled their security since our escape. She pulled up another hologram showing guard positions. And now we have Lumini agents to worry about too. A soft knock at the door made them both freeze. Sarah drew her weapon while Naira's empathic senses reached out. It's okay, Naira whispered. I recognize this presence. It's Min from the noodle shop downstairs. The old woman entered carrying a tray of food, but her expression was worried. Commander, there's something you should see. She handed Sarah a data chip. My security cameras caught this an hour ago. The chip's contents made Sarah's blood run cold. The images showed Lumini agents meeting with the traffickers, handing over some kind of technology. She enhanced the image. That's an empathic dampener, Naira said, her skin paling to a light gray. A much stronger version than what they used before. With this, they could suppress my abilities completely. Sarah squeezed Naira's hand. Then we'll just have to be smarter than their technology. They spent hours planning their mission. Sarah contacted the few XPU agents she still trusted, positioning them around the auction house. Naira drew detailed maps of the building's interior from memory, marking every entrance and security measure. As night fell, they put their plan into action. Sarah wore her black market buyer disguise again, while Naira wore stolen servant's clothes. They walked right through the front door, hiding in plain sight. Everything went smoothly until they reached the basement stairs. A guard stopped them, pointing a scanner at Naira. The device hummed, and suddenly Naira gasped, her glow flickering out completely. The empathic dampener was working. "Your servant seems unwell," the guard said suspiciously. Sarah didn't hesitate. She smiled coldly and said, "Of course she's unwell. I paid good money for this defective merchandise. I'm here to demand a refund." The guard bought the act and let them pass. Once in the basement, Sarah quickly found the records room. But as she started downloading files, alarms blared throughout the building. "They know," Naira said, still unable to use her abilities. "Sarah, there are too many coming. We can't fight them without my powers." Sarah grabbed Naira's shoulders. "Your powers aren't what make you strong, Naira. Everything I've seen you do, your courage, your kindness, your determination, that comes from who you are, not what you can do." Something changed in Naira's eyes. Even without her glow, she stood straighter. "You're right. Powers or no powers, we finish this." The next few minutes were chaos. Guards and Lumini agents converged on their position. But Sarah's military training combined with Naira's knowledge of Lumini fighting techniques kept them alive. They fought their way up from the basement, the stolen data secured. Just before reaching the exit, they faced 3 Lumini agents with dampening weapons. The agents sneered at Naira. "Defective," one spat. "You shame our species." Naira stepped forward. "No, being able to feel, to care, to love, that's not a defect. That's evolution." She grabbed Sarah's hand, and somehow, despite the dampeners, her skin began to glow. Not just glow, it blazed like a star, blinding their opponents long enough for them to escape. Later, safely away, Sarah asked, "How did you do that? The dampeners should have stopped you." Naira smiled. "They can dampen empathic abilities, but they can't dampen love. And that's what makes us strongest of all." The evidence they stole spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Videos of the Lumini hierarchy's deals with traffickers appeared on every newsfeed. Records of payments and lists of defective Lumini sold into slavery shocked people on every world. Sarah and Naira watched the chaos unfold from the safety of XPU headquarters. On the main screen, crowds of glowing Lumini filled the streets of their homeworld's capital city. They carried signs demanding change, their combined light bright enough to be seen from space. "It's really happening," Naira whispered, her own glow pulsing with hope. "They're finally standing up." But not everyone supported their actions. Sarah's superior officer, Director Hayes, stormed into the room waving diplomatic warnings. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouted. "The Lumini hierarchy is threatening to cut all ties with Earth." "Good," Sarah said firmly, standing up. "We shouldn't have ties with governments that sell their own people." "This isn't your decision to make, Commander Chen." Hayes pointed at Naira. "Turn her over to her government's agents." "That's an order." The room fell silent. Sarah moved to stand between Hayes and Naira. "No, no." Hayes's face turned red. "This is a direct order." "Then I quit." Sarah removed her XPU badge and placed it on the desk. "I won't send anyone back to slavery, especially not." She glanced at Naira, her voice softening. "Especially not someone I love." Naira's glow brightened until she lit up the whole room. She took Sarah's hand, sending waves of emotion through their touch. Hayes opened his mouth to argue more, but was interrupted by a new message on the main screen. It showed the Lumini capital again, but this time the crowd was even larger. Former defectives who had escaped slavery stood at the front, sharing their stories. "Look at them," Sarah said, pointing to the screen. "They're not just fighting the traffickers. They're fighting for the right to feel, to care, to be themselves. Earth is supposed to protect people's rights. If we turn our backs now, we're no better than the traffickers." More screens lit up. Messages poured in from Earth's colonies and other alien worlds supporting the Lumini protesters. The trafficking evidence had exposed corruption that spread far beyond just one species. Hayes watched the messages multiply, his anger fading into resignation. "The Council wants to see you both," he finally said. "They're meeting to decide Earth's official response to this situation." An hour later, Sarah and Nera stood before Earth's Xenological Council. The Grand Chamber was packed with representatives from every human colony and allied alien world. Sarah spoke first, her voice clear and strong. "The Lumini people don't need Earth to save them. They're saving themselves, but they do need us to stand with them. To show the galaxy that suppressing emotions and selling defectives is never acceptable." Nera stepped forward. "My people are changing. For centuries, we were taught that feelings made us weak. But look at humans." She turned to Sarah with shining eyes. "Their emotions make them stronger. They feel deeply, love completely, and fight fiercely for what they believe in. That's not weakness. That's power." As if to prove her point, Naira's glow expanded, filling the chamber with waves of her own emotions: hope, determination, and love. The council members murmured in amazement. The council voted unanimously to support the Lumini revolution. They also launched investigations into trafficking networks on every world, determined to end the slave trade completely. As they left the chamber, Sarah pulled Naira close. "I meant what I said in there about loving you." Naira's glow pulsed with joy. "I know. I felt it growing stronger every day." She touched Sarah's cheek. "You humans say love conquers all. My people never understood that saying until now. And now we're learning that love doesn't make us defective." Naira smiled. "It makes us whole." 1 year later, the Lumini capital city sparkled under its 3 suns. The old hierarchy buildings, once cold and gray, now shone with the combined glow of hundreds of Lumini working together in the new government. Among them, Naira's light burned especially bright. Sarah watched from the doorway of their shared office as Naira finished a call with another group of rescued defectives returning home. In the past year, they had found and brought back over 2,000 Lumini who had been sold into slavery. "Another group safely home," Naira said, turning to Sarah with a smile that lit up her whole face. "That makes 15 ships this month." Sarah stepped into the office, still amazed at how much had changed. She now served as Earth's first ambassador to the free Lumini democracy, working alongside Naira, who led the rehabilitation program for returned survivors. "You've done amazing work," Sarah said, taking Naira's hand. The familiar tingle of their touch had grown stronger over the months, as if their connection deepened with each passing day. "We've done amazing work," Naira corrected her. "Without you, none of this would have happened." She looked out the window at the city below. "Sometimes I still can't believe how different everything is." The changes were everywhere. Lumini now freely showed their emotions, their skin colors shifting with their feelings instead of being forced into the cold, uniform white the hierarchy had demanded. Children played in the streets, their laughter making their small bodies glow like stars. "The best change is there," Sarah said, pointing to a new building across the square. It was the first combined human Lumini medical academy, where healers learned to use both their empathic abilities and their emotions to help patients. Naira squeezed her hand, ready for the ceremony. Today was special. The last group of traffickers had finally been caught, and the former hierarchy leaders were facing justice. But more importantly, the Lumini Council had voted to create a new holiday, Freedom Day, marking 1 year since their revolution. They walked together to the great central plaza, where thousands of Lumini had gathered. As they stepped onto the stage, Sarah saw many familiar faces in the crowd. Min, the noodle shop owner who had helped them. former slaves they had rescued, even Director Hayes, who had become one of their strongest supporters. Naira stepped up to speak first. Her glow reached out to touch everyone in the crowd, sharing her emotions in the open way that was now celebrated instead of punished. 1 year ago, we thought we were defective because we felt too much, she said. We were told that emotions made us weak, but we learned, through our human friends, that feeling deeply gives us strength. That love isn't a flaw, it's the greatest power in the galaxy. Sarah stepped forward to stand beside her. Earth and the free Lumini democracy now stand as examples to the galaxy. We've shown that when we embrace our feelings, when we fight for what's right, when we love without fear, we can change worlds. Naira turned to Sarah, her silver eyes shining. Speaking of love, she took both of Sarah's hands in hers. There's something I want to ask you. The crowd fell silent as Naira began to glow brighter than ever before. In the traditional Lumini way, she shared her feelings directly, love, hope, dedication, and joy all flowing into Sarah through their joined hands. Will you bond with me? Naira asked. Join our lives together in both human and Lumini tradition. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of happiness. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss made Naira's glow explode like a supernova, spreading waves of joy across the entire plaza. The crowd erupted in cheers, their combined light rivaling the 3 suns overhead. As they held each other, Sarah smiled at the thought that had started it all. A simple undercover mission to save one slave. Instead, she had found love, helped free an entire species, and learned that the greatest revolution of all was the freedom to feel, to care, and to love without limits. The end.